Hi everyone, Rich Pellegrino, Rich the Equalizer Pellegrino at the Global Woke Institute website, www.howwokemi.org. There's a new message on that website on the homepage about what's going on in the world and who we really are and how we can bring peace. And we've been talking about that in some of these short videos. Of course, you can see these videos on YouTube, on our channel at Global Woke Institute, as well as our social media pages as well, and longer videos as well that go more in detail. These are just shorts. Um, so tonight, we've talked a lot about violence and how our society is born, bred, and sustained by violence. That's a culture that we have created, we the people, from the bottom up and top down government institutions. It's violent. Violence is our method. Okay, that's how we solve, resolve, grow, you name it. And once again, now we're reeling. The country's reeling. Georgia's reeling. Wyandotte community in Barrow County here in the Atlanta metro area is reeling from another senseless gun toting young person who shot up a school and killed four people, two students and two teachers. That happens to be the school district right next to my grandkids, and my granddaughter and grandson have friends in that school, and we're in contact with them during the shooting. So it's close to home, but it's always close to home, and all of our children are at risk. Remember, it used to be at risk children were the poor ones growing up in the ghetto, whatever. All kids are at risk in America to be the victims of violence now because it happens everywhere and anywhere on a daily basis. Okay, and I'm not going to go back into the details of, you can watch the other videos about violence, but just a few tidbits here before we talk about how to solve the problem. Right, of school shootings, there's ways to solve the problem right now to start working together to solve the problem. But we have a young, white identified Caucasian man who is often the shooter, not always, but often, who was bullied in school, who doesn't have an identity. His mother was in and out of jail. His father raised him. His father, who's gun toting, one of those gun toting responsible people, who's now, by the way, in jail as well, charged, and as he should be, together with his son for giving access to his 14-year-old son, who's had mental health issues, who's been accused of threats before. And so the father's in jail too, now charged. And that is one of the common sense things that should be done. Not only should the parents be charged, but the gun manufacturers as well. But we'll get into that. So, and of course, he grew up with no identity, with a false identity. We've talked about that, the false supremacies of race, racial supremacy, religious supremacy, American supremacy, all false identities. So if he found out any of that, online, gaming, whatever, that it's all lies that he's been taught, of course he's hopeless. Of course he's got mental health problems, as do probably a majority of Americans because of these false identities that have been taught to us. Okay? So that's the cause, and those are long term cultural causes. And let's not get into the discussion and the debate over gun control. We already know anyone who's awake, awoken, whatever, is outside of their bubble or outside of the cult and culture of gun violence knows that more guns equals more violence, less guns equals less violence. It's been proven. There's studies, independent studies, that are not fueled or funded by the gun industry. And there's examples all over the world. Less guns, more gun control equals less violence, period. Okay? There's no arguing with that. But Americans have another supremacy, part of their whole violence mentality. The cult and culture, the gun culture is so embedded. It's gun, God, and country. And people love their guns as much or more than they love their children. And so you're fighting a losing battle, arguing against it. And number one. Number two, it's funded by millions and billions of dollars. Politicians are bought and so forth, bought and sold by the gun manufacturers. So it's a cult, it's a culture, it's part of the culture of violence. And we'll talk about one thing that we can do rather than wait on politicians. So let's talk about what we can do to protect our kids. Okay? First of all, we need to come together in our communities. Okay? Put down the partisanship, even put down the gun versus non gun, ownership, because that's divisive. Okay? Because most responsible gun owners, they're for more gun control. So that's not a big issue. Let's let's come together. Let's put our heads and hearts together as parents, grandparents, and figure out some common sense things. Here's the good news. The good news is we only hear about the failures and about the violence and about the school and mass shootings. We don't hear about all the successes, all the ones that are being thwarted and prevented by some of these things, these strategies that are working. And they are in some places. Okay, one common sense one that, and again, I'm not saying that this is for the group, the community to determine what will work in their community. But one that's worked in several states, Florida, Oklahoma, and so forth, and in random counties and cities is metal detectors. It should be a no-brainer, but it's not. Okay, it's not widespread. There are not metal detectors in most schools. That's a local decision that the people have to pressure their school board to spend the money. Of course, that's your taxes to do that. And then, of course, it lengthens the school day because it takes time to go through those. So there are, quote, drawbacks, but the benefits way outweigh the negatives with that. Okay, so that's one. The other one is bullying. Okay, bullies tend to be the ones who've been bullied. It's almost always the same personality type that does these mass shootings. Okay, and so there's been programs started in schools by some of the anti-gun or gun control organizations, March for Our Lives, the Brady Institute, and so forth. Young people have actually started anti-bullying initiatives in the schools where they know who's the bullies are and they know who is being the target, who's being bullied. So they befriend both and identify both to mental health counselors because both need help. Bullies need tough love help because they don't have any self-esteem if they're bullies, and those that are the object of the bullying. So these programs are starting to work. They're fairly new, and they're student and youth run with advisors, with teacher and mental health advisors, counselor advisors. So that's working. Okay, so those are just two. Now, if we want to get to gun control, to get rid of assault weapons and ammunition in our communities, that's something we could do without the politicians, without laws being passed. We've already successfully gotten Walmart to stop selling them, one of the biggest companies. So we could certainly reach out to the other sellers of such weapons in our towns, okay, in our communities, in our counties, and ask them not to sell those specific guns. They can continue to sell other guns. Ask them to voluntarily be good citizens, good community cooperators, and some of them might tell us to go to hell, but then we know which ones are the bad ones, which ones are not cooperative, which ones just care about money. Okay? And hopefully we'll boycott those ones and support the gun sellers who cooperate with the community. They don't need to be selling assault rifles. Meanwhile, there are bills, bipartisan bills, to reban assault weapons and ammunition, high, um, uh, what do you call the ammunition? I forgot, but it's the ammunition that's used in assault weapons. So high capacity ammo. And it's gaining, those bills are gaining traction and may be successful because we've already had an assault weapons ban. And guess what? There were less mass shootings. Okay, it's a no-brainer if you use science and use your rational thinking. But remember, when it comes to guns, it's not up here, it's the heart. People are in love with guns. Okay, just like they're in love with their religion, and most religion in this country is false. It's not Christianity at all. Just like being in love with the gun culture is false. It's a cult. Okay, so anyway, that's a few of the things we could do. There's more in our community. We can work with law enforcement to get more mental health counselors. We can get more mental health treatment out there, and we can start teaching people the truth about themselves, their identity in school, outside school, in churches, mosques, temples, in and teach true history instead of banning and trying to lie about our history. Okay, kids know when they're being lied to, and that does not help their mental health. Okay, that's all I have to say today. I went on longer than usual because this is an important topic that we really need to focus on, and we're going to do it in our community. You can reach out to us if you want help in your community organizing a Stop the Violence campaign. Okay, ciao.